I am officially getting sad now because this is literally the last Halloween project for 2018. It's the Spooky Shack, which is a kind of like a witch's house. And I'd say it's probably the intermediate project compared to all three. And it's gonna look great alongside the pumpkin place and our other little fairy house. They're all really cool. I think this one's gonna be really fun to put together. So let's just dive right in. And let's begin with something simple, just to get our feet wet. We'll put together our little base here, and then we'll move on to the hat, and then the final structure here. So in front of me, I have the base, and I've already gone and folded all of the pieces into place. Well, not into place, but just kind of folded everything at the score marks to make the assembly that much easier. And what we're gonna do, just like we did with the other two projects, is we're gonna begin by putting glue on the little triangular tabs here. Just a very little bit of glue here. Don't need a lot. And I'm gonna fold it over and tuck it behind its neighbor. Let me move this tab out of the way. And just line it up so it's nice and straight up and down. And give it a squeeze and hold that in place until it sets. And just took a little lunch break in between projects here and went and got some Chipotle, and I was just driving down the country roads. I swear the other day when I was prop shopping, by the way, I'm going on to the next tab here. I was prop shopping and it was humid as heck. And literally it went from, I'll continue telling my story here in a second. Going to tuck that next triangular tab behind its neighbor and just make sure it's nice and aligned and give it a squeeze. And the temperature just dropped 40 some degrees. Well, 30 some degrees. It's a high of like 50 today, and the humidity is gone, and it is officially feeling, finally, being October 11th, really finally feels like fall, and that sentimental feeling that I get is finally kind of creeping in. All right, moving on here to the next little triangular tab. You should be able to see it right. Let me make sure that this is in focus. It doesn't look like it's totally in focus here. There we go. Just get that kind of calm feeling when fall settles in. Trying to get all my stuff done today so that I can head up to the North Woods and see the first psychedelic display of color in one of my favorite states. Not my favorite football team, but definitely one of my favorite states. Go Bears. And when I get back, I'll be setting up for a Halloween party, and then before you know it, it'll be the holiday rush. So I really want to enjoy this time here. Next tab, next triangular tab, just a tiny little bit of glue, and just tuck it behind its neighbor and let it set. Probably could have gave that one a little more time. Be patient when you're gluing these little tiny pieces together because they are they're very important to the structure, and we want to make sure that they hold nice and tight before we move on here. Okay, that should be good. Now this part here where we've got the large piece hinged, I think it'd probably be a good idea to move over to this side here and get that tab glued in. I'm rocking the old school Scotch bottle here. I had to get a new bottle out and didn't realize I still had an old, like the old branding. Okay, so we're gonna pop that in like so. This is a little tricky because of this giant piece here. Just use whatever finger you need to kind of hold that in place. That's how I'm doing it. I'm just using my pointer and my thumb and just kind of squishing it in between there. And yeah. So fall's finally here. It definitely gives me a sense of calm. Okay, last little tab here, and actually that came undone because it's a little heavy, so I may just want to do both of these at the same time. Okay, just get those last two remaining tabs joined. You may want to just grab one side with one set of fingers and the other side with another set of fingers and just hold those in place until it fully sets. Or you could put that down on your surface like that and just push down like that. That thing is a little heavy, so to speak, relative to the size of that little tab that needs to hold it up. So it probably is stressing it out a little bit. Okay, so we're going to close this up now and just close it shut. Very simple. Let me open this up for just a moment. And what we're going to do is we're going to get our glue on all these tabs here. And then a nice thin line right out to the very edge. I'm going to spread that nice and thin. This is going to be our bottom. So even if you kind of mess it up a little bit and it's not perfect, it's not the end of the world because no one's going to be looking at the bottom. The other side, the underside right now that it's sitting on is already all joined together. So we're going to use that as our top. It's just going to look more polished in case we have an off moment with our crafting here and don't do a great job. Okay, so go ahead and close that up. And I'm going to focus my attention here on the front and make sure that that is all nice and properly lined up, and then work the rest of the perimeter. And you may need to maybe just nudge the wall in a little bit just to make sure that it gets nice and aligned with the rest of this little shape here. And try to maintain like a downward pressure. And you can kind of you can kind of hear how windy it is by that sound you just heard. It's very, very windy today. Okay, so this structure is pretty much done here. Take a look and make sure that everything is making good contact. And if you do by chance have a little area that's lifting up, just grab a scrap piece of paper, and grab my little inking piece that I used, and just throw a little glue right on the edge of your paper. Find the little spot that maybe is not fully down right. You can see that, yeah, you can see how it's kind of bulging out. I'll just take my little piece of paper and paint a little bit of glue on the underside of that top piece, and then just push that down and hold that in a specific area for just a few moments to let that set. Okay, now we can go ahead and flip it over. We're going to use the other side, as we mentioned, because it's already nice and crisp all the way around. And we're going to create our little lip. So you're going to take these two pieces. I've already pre-folded everything. And you'll see that there are two sides, or one side on each one that has a little triangle. And what we're going to do is we're going to join this and make it all one piece by connecting them using these little triangles here. Okay, so let's do that. Just going to connect it right there, right, butting it up right against where that little tab begins, where that little score mark is. I'm going to fold it on top of itself and take a look at it. It should be sitting on top of itself exactly. That's how you know that you glued it precisely. And then I'm going to fold it over this way and put some glue on the other triangular tab. Just spread that out nicely. You can put that flat and then take this piece and just lay it right on top of it. And I'm going to fold it onto itself at the little glue point and just make sure that that is nice and aligned, and it is. And we can flatten this out so that you have valley folds all the way around. And you can take it and kind of just shove it into this little shape here. And that should fit nice and snug. And that is going to create our little lip for our house to sit on, just like that. Okay, we can always pull that out a little bit if we need to. So what we're going to do next is just take and just a tiny little bit of glue, probably right in the middle of the tab, like that. And then just put that down on your surface and push down to get that to adhere. And just like that. And then just work your way around the remaining tabs here. And just use your table to press down. You could even take a little dowel to apply nice even pressure all the way around. Whatever works for you. I hope that while you guys are following along with me, you try something. If something comes to mind or you have that aha moment and you figure out, oh, maybe I could use this to make this process easier, feel free to do that. I'm still kind of experimenting and learning as I go. I'm sure that years from now, I'll have all sorts of little tips and tricks to make these processes easier. And whatever works. I think I've learned a lot over the last 3 years, and I think the projects look great. Okay, all right, I've got one more here. So we'll get that glued just right down the center there, just a little bit, just so it holds. You don't need to get every inch of that thing glued down. Okay, all right, so we've got our little lip structure, and what we're gonna do is we're gonna glue that to the little base that we just created. So let's flip this one over and let's get some glue towards the center here. And then most importantly, you want some glue out to the edge. This is another thing that I just started doing too. I'm kind of almost like drawing it on there. Sometimes it's hard to keep a steady hand. And I know that like when artists do some sketching, sometimes they have a very loose hand. And for things like this where you want to be accurate, but you want to kind of move it and not take forever, kind of just like, you know, using a little bit of a stroke like that really helps speed things up. And then also, I think it actually ends up being more accurate because I'm not a surgeon by any means. All right, so we're going to line this up nice and accurate, and then just run your finger along the edge, get that downward force on there to get that edge to connect and be nice and seamless. There we go. There we go. And our base is looking really nice. Okay, so there is our base. And we, of course, have a little bit of something here to jazz this up. All right, so we're going to apply our grass. I'm going to start with one of these middle sections here. You'll notice that there's a tiny little section here as well, and that is a little piece that's going to overlap because there's a lot going on with this grass, and if it kind of terminated right at an edge like that, it may look a little odd. So just put some glue on one of the middle pieces here and just kind of use your table to help you with the initial alignment and just kind of nudge and get the corners in place, and then you can lift it up. Just make sure that it's nice and flush with the bottom so that it sits nice and flat. Okay, just like that. And I took this and inked it, and I also hit it with an embossing folder just to kind of give it a little bit of texture there. And I may hit the edges there with a little bit of ink to hide some of that white core. Okay, so let's open up one of these sides here. And you don't need to put glue on the entire thing here. I would focus it more on the bottom half, maybe even the bottom third, and just spread that out nice and thin all the way out to the bottom and side edge there. And then just fold that in. Make sure it's nice and flush with the bottom. Run your finger along there just to kind of help it stick to the base. Okay, that should be good. You can kind of hold it a little bit longer. And then get your next little bit of glue there. Just extend that glue out to the very edge on the bottom there. And fold that over on top of the base there. And it looks like our witch friend hasn't mowed her lawn in quite some time, and that's why her grass is really tall. But I guess, how scary would it be if her lawn was perfectly manicured? We don't want that. All right, and then this little section here that's left, throw a little bit of glue on there, spread it out to the bottom and right up to the edge there, and just fold it over and give that a press. Okay, now I'm going to grab this piece, and you'll see here that this piece is going to overlap the other side. Okay, so we want to get that overlap, and we can actually start right on this side here. I'm going to put glue in this whole area here, extending up to the grass as well. And then I'm going to put some glue here as well and rub that out. And just get that nice and lined up so that the overlapping piece matches up nicely and evenly. And then this part here, you want that to match up with the little corner piece there. And just give that a press, make sure that all of this grass kind of matches up nicely. And then we can continue on down the line here. Throw our glue right on there and just spread it out to the bottom. If you're feeling confident, by all means, you can do more than one section at a time. I would rather err on the side of caution and get it nice and perfect the first time around and not risk trying to do too much at once. I'm sure you guys have experienced that situation where you're trying to carry way too much stuff to save time, and then you end up dropping something and breaking some glass. And I think that's a good metaphor for maybe not trying to do too much at once when it comes to this, because you may just break something or something may not come out looking the way you want it to. Okay, and that just leaves this little tiny piece, which again is going to overlap the other piece here. So let's get our glue towards the bottom and then just a few little streaks up on the actual grass itself. Spread that out a little bit and then just overlap it right over the existing leaves that are there, or grass I should say. And there we go. Okay, so there is our base in all of its glory, and it's pretty much ready to go. So let's move on to our hat. Well, we could do that, or we can kind of play with the leaves. Actually, maybe we should do the leaves here. Let's assemble these leaves real quick because we want them to dry completely before we start training them. So I took a nice red ink to that to kind of hit the edges to give it a little burnt kind of feel, burnt from the sun sort of thing. Just put some glue on the back of the little veins here. Make sure that you get it out to the edges so they don't come peeling up when we go to train this thing. Let me kind of dab a little more glue onto the very end of it and just place that right in the center of your beautiful little leaf here. Give it a press. Press nice and tight. We want as much contact as we can get on this piece because we are going to end up training these and kind of flare them out a little bit because our witch's hat is going to have some leaves popping out from underneath. Okay, so that's pretty good for that one. Just repeat the same thing on the other side here. And don't overdo it with the glue. Luckily, on bright colors like that with this Scotch tacky glue, the glue kind of, it turns into it gives it a glossy sort of look because of how it dries, but you don't notice it that much on bright colors. If it was black, it would definitely show up, but go ahead and just get that nice and centered. Make sure you keep this little vein piece below the little score mark area there. We're going to use that little tab above the score mark to glue this to the top of our little shack. Okay, there we go. So we'll leave that off to the side, let that dry, and we can start putting together our little hat here. Okay, I've already taken and folded everything at the score marks here. And what we're gonna do is we're gonna apply our vellum. It's all yellow, so it's all the same. And we're gonna apply it on the inside here. And the main objective here is just to make sure that you don't obstruct, or that you cover all of the little cutouts with the vellum. And also, don't get any glue in the cutout areas, which you really can't do because there's nothing to apply glue to. But when you're pressing this down, try not to smudge or smear any glue in there. That's kind of what it should look like from the outside. Okay, so go ahead and take the rest of these pieces. You got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Well, you've got 5 more. This piece here, you'll see how it's kind of cut at an angle. That's essentially, this is a large tab. Okay, that's going to go underneath here. So you don't want to put vellum there. Just put vellum here and leave that one blank. So go ahead and do that, and then we'll kind of pick up here in just a second. Okay, so I've got all my vellum in there. It's not perfect, but it's on there from the outside. It looks great. And what we're going to do is we're going to take our glue and go kind of light in this area here. Remember, this is just a large tab, and it has the cutouts in it because we don't want to obstruct the light coming through. Okay, we'll just get a nice line of glue out to the very edge like that, and just wrap that around to the other side. And you can technically, should be able to fold this flat. Yep. And you can just fold it flat like that. That just kind of helps get a nice seam and get it to stick a lot quicker. And then we'll just pop it back into shape here in just a moment once it's set. There we go. Okay, and then just pop it back into shape. And there is our little witch's hat. Okay, and next thing we're going to do is we're going to assemble this portion here. So I've got 2 layers here. One layer that's a little bit smaller than the other. That's going to be on top. And this is the bottom layer here. Now these tabs are going to be connected to the top of the house. You can just leave them flat for now. I just kind of trained them a little bit, and then this we can flatten out. This is going to connect to this in just a moment. So we need to figure out how this goes on here, and it's going to go on. Where's it going? There it is, like that. Okay, obviously you want a nice even border going all the way around. Okay, and just get some glue. Don't put any glue on the tabs, just on the outer portion here. I'm going to be kind of delicate with the glue on the inside, but then we definitely, because we're going to train this hat, we want to kind of go a little bit heavier on the outside, and then we also want to kind of spread it thin so that we get it out to the ultimate edge there. And again, you can use your finger or a scrap piece of paper, whatever you want to do to kind of paint that glue right out to the very edge. And again, thinning it up is going to help it set a lot quicker too. So whatever you want to do, and now I kind of knocked it out of whack here, so hopefully I get it right. That's right, like that. And just make sure you keep a nice even border all the way around, and I would focus your attention on pushing down on the edges here so that you don't get any little areas popping up when we go to train this thing. And we're going to let this set for a little while before we join everything together. Okay, so I just want to be sure that this is all nice and together, and when we go to train it together, it won't come peeling apart. Okay, which means that we're actually ready to start assembling the main structure. This is actually like I said, I think this is the intermediate project as far as the amount of time. I think I never want to say that any project is easier or harder, because as long as you have the time and basic craft skills, which I'm kind of teaching you along the way, you can make anything from our website. But there we go. So let's let that really set before we do anything. This is a little band that we're going to put around the hat, and I don't want to do that just yet because I would much rather do it after these two pieces are joined, so we can really put this down all the way at the bottom to hide any imperfections or whatnot. So let's just put our hat off to the side for now, let that completely set, and let's take a look at the main structure here, which is very similar to the pumpkin place that we worked on. We're going to put this together, we're going to put our vellum on, and then we're going to finish it off with the panels, and then put our windows and doors on. So, as you can see, I have gone and folded everything, and I've also taken my dowel and ever so slightly trained this a little bit, because it's going to have a little bit of a natural curve. So take your dowel and just kind of train the paper, loosen up those fibers, and get them to begin curving ever so slightly. The rest of that will happen when we actually begin gluing everything together. You can do the same thing to this one here, just kind of curve it with a dowel. And at this point, it's really up to you if you want to start at the top or the bottom. I'm going to go ahead and start at the bottom, get some glue on my first tab here. And again, you want to make sure that the edges, this edge here and the edge here where the little tab is, the straight part, it's not really straight, it's a little curved. You want to make sure that those line up as precisely as you can get them. So I know that it's, visually it almost kind of looks like a straight line. It's not, but you can get it to align straight on, or actually just get it to align accurately, I think is probably what I'm trying to express here. And then we can flip this around and put some glue on our next tab. Just throw it on there and kind of spread it thin. You can flip it over and just give it a push and squeeze that tab onto this structure here. Okay, and we've got a tiny little tab here. This one is actually big enough to where we should put some glue on it and kind of press it into place. It's a little trying, so if you want, what you can actually do is use a dowel, as long as you know that you've got it lined up nicely. That's good enough. And then there's another tiny little tab here. I'll do the same thing to that, just a small little bit of glue on there, just to get it to stick. It's more or less there to prevent any light from penetrating through. And let me see if I can do it this way. There we go, that's more comfortable for my fingers there. Just connect it, try to follow that curve, give it a few seconds to set. That's a small one, so that should set pretty quick. And we can move on to the next tab here. Just putting glue on this guy here. Spread it nice and thin, get it lined up like that. And just give it a squeeze, make sure it stays. And I'll just move on to the next one. Nice thin layer of glue, you don't need to overdo it. Line that up nicely. Give it a press. And work our way up to the final one. This one's bigger. And there we go. You'll notice that as we kind of work our way around and finish constructing this thing, that the top is not completely flat. It's at a bit of an angle, which is by design because the head's kind of cocked a little bit. All right, so moving on, we're going to do the same thing here. So I'm going to start here at the bottom, get some glue on this tab. I'm just going to spread that out a little bit. Okay, tuck that behind here, get that angle, and give it a squeeze. You can actually squeeze it like that too if you want. That works for me. And then get in here, next tab, kind of rubbing that glue around so it's not so thick. And give that a squeeze, make sure it's nice and aligned. I think this one's actually a little bit easier than the pumpkin place as far as gluing these pieces together. I think the pumpkin place was I don't remember if it was 4-sided or, I'm sorry, 6-sided or 8-sided. I want to say it was 8-sided. All right, back to the small little tab here, just a tiny little drop. Spread it nice and thin if you can. You can see that little tab there, the tiny one. Get that aligned and just give it a squeeze. You may only get half your finger on it because it is kind of small, but that's all you need. Okay, perfect. And then we can move on to the next tiny little tab here. Hopefully you can kind of see what's going on here with that little one. Let me see if I can show you from this side. Yeah, I guess we can do it from this side. You can see that tiny little tab here. I don't like doing it from this side because I'm afraid I'm going to get glue everywhere, but I do want to show you what's going on here. That is probably the most comfortable for my finger. Get it nice and aligned. And give it a push. Oops, that might be easier. Whatever works. There we go. You can almost feel it bonding. Okay, and moving right up here to the next tabs. There's 3 left on that one. Let's see if I can show you that. You can see they're casting shadows here, 1, 2, 3. So I'm just going to use my glue nozzle to kind of push the tab down so I can get the glue on it. Let me see if I can move that out of the way. There we go. There you go. Just kind of drawing some glue on there. And again, I think this would be, there we go, like that. And just hold that in place. Yeah, this one's definitely going to go a lot quicker than the pumpkin place because the pumpkin place also involved a roof portion. So there's that other tab. Just going to get my glue on here, nice and thin, and get that lined up. You can actually stick your finger in through the top, so that makes it easier. It's these few tabs here in the middle that are probably the most challenging because it's hard to get your fingers in there. You got to kind of work from the side, but you can still do it. This is probably the most meditative part of paper crafting. I always tell people, especially, I mean, actually, when people email me sometimes, they're like, you know, I find so much peace in doing this and it's so relaxing. I would say that this is probably the most Zen moment that you're gonna have, is putting these little tabs together. It's like a muscle memory, repetitive sort of thing. You don't have to really use the thinking part of your brain. It's almost just, you're just like you're an autopilot, pretty much. Okay, all right, so let's let that sit for a minute. We're gonna do the same thing to the other side. Once we're done with that, we're gonna glue our vellum inside. We're gonna do it from the inside just to make life easier. So put that off to the side to let it really cure. And we're gonna repeat the same process here. So I'm not showing you anything new here. So if you're confident, you can go ahead and just do your thing and kind of skip ahead or pause me and put on some news or a show or something, finish this up, and then just kind of scrub ahead in the video and meet me at the next step. But I just took that bottom tab, threw a little glue on it. Again, just trying to find that natural curve that's there, align it, and then just press and squeeze to get that to bond. And then we can move on to the next tab. And really the next step in this is going to be applying our vellum, and then joining these two sides together to make it one solid piece. All right, so there's the next tab, all glued down. I'm going to see if I can work a little bit quicker here. There's a little bit of glue for that tiny little guy. And you know what, honestly, at the end of the day, once we get these panels on here, I don't even think that little tab's gonna matter much. But it's big enough to actually grip, so I'm gonna suggest that you give it some glue and get it to stick. That thing's tiny, I can't even fold it over, so I'm gonna go from this side here. Actually, you know, another thing you can do if your glue nozzle is way too small, you can just grab a scrap piece of paper and just paint a little glue on there with a thin little piece of paper. It's it doesn't get much more accurate than a tiny sheet, a thin, almost like a, well, I forget what the actual thickness of paper is. I knew at one point. Okay. All right, moving on to the larger tabs here. Let's get some glue on this guy. Just kind of spread that out. And get that nice and aligned. That one's tough because, there we go. That's, find whatever position is most comfortable for you. Just get it nice and aligned and give it a press. You know, I swear, I think the last project that I always do is always most accurately put together, I think, because I've just been, I'm going on crafting now for probably about, I don't know, 7 hours maybe. So you kind of get into a rhythm. All right, next tab, getting glued in place. And that is good. Final one here. Throw a little glue on there. Bam. And close that up. Just focus on the alignment. That's the most important thing. Okay, so next section here, starting with the bottom tab. We don't have to do this. After this section, we have to do this 2 more times to get everything joined together. So we're almost done. And actually, after this, putting the panels on is pretty straightforward. It's going to go a lot quicker than this. And before you know it, we'll be done here. I'm actually surprised that this thing went together as fast as it did. I was expecting a little bit more work, but it's not bad at all. All right, next tab. Just like that, very thin. Don't overdo it with the glue on this. This is just a structural piece. Just need enough glue. Think about it, every single one of these tabs is doing a little bit of work, and together as a group, all that little bit of glue goes a long way. You don't need to overdo it, because that is when stuff doesn't stick. That's when paper warps. That's when you get a gluey mess. And that's when you get frustrated. So go easy on the glue a little bit. All right, moving on to the next little tiny tab here. Just a tiny little one. Get that in there. Actually, you know what you could do is take the large tab that's above the small one and get that in place first. It'll almost make it easier, I think, to get that small one in place. Or, honestly, I think you could skip it altogether. It's not really going to change much. I'm going to get that one in place, and then I'll go back and just kind of squeeze that one into place. I still have glue on it. There we go. That was it. All right, next tab here, we've got 2 more. There's one. Just like that. Just follow that curve. Get it nice and aligned. There we go. Beautiful. And the last one before we go into vellum mode. There we go. And get that aligned. Okay. All right, all right. All right, all right, all right. Okay, so let's grab this other one now, let this one set while we work on getting our vellum in place. Now you'll notice there's 3 that have a little moon cut out of them, and then there's 3 without a moon. There's 2 moons on this one, so we'll need 2 of those and 1 of these, and then 2 little moons. Okay, we'll start with the middle here. We're just going to lay that down and apply glue to the perimeter and just make sure that the vellum is completely covering up the little cutouts there. So I'm just going to go with a nice thin line around the perimeter, as close to the actual cutouts as possible without actually getting on there. And just throw this thing on there, making sure that you're covering all of the little cutouts. Okay, and then you can just kind of press over these areas here just to make sure that our vellum is making good contact. And there you go, you can see what that's going to look like. Okay, now we're going to get our moon in here, and I'm going to use my table, but you can see how that's going to cover that, and just make sure that you don't obstruct the moon. And actually, good thing I noticed that. Some of these moons are bigger than others, okay, like this one, this piece here, as much as you try, you're still gonna obstruct that cutout. So make sure you find the correct one, which in this case, that's not it. Oh wait, yeah it is, there it is. Okay, that one is the perfect size because you can see that the vellum actually cuts out around it a little bit more. You got a little extra space there. So let's get our glue down. Just kind of work the perimeter. There we go. And just lay that down. Make sure that the vellum is covering up all the little cutouts. You don't want to miss one. And then, so in this instance, we need the bigger moon. You can see that there's one that's a little bit smaller. So get the bigger moon on there, and just a few dots around the perimeter. You don't need to get all fancy. And just make sure that you cover that up nicely. There we go. So you've got yellow here and an orange here. That's just to kind of give it a little more interest. Okay, now we'll find the one with the smaller moon, and you can see how that fits. You got a nice little orange border going all the way around it. That's how you know that you've got the right piece. Again, no one's going to see the inside of this, so don't worry too much about being all perfect with your vellum here. It's going to diffuse anything. You're not going to be able to see it from the outside at all, even though it is kind of partially transparent, I guess. Not really. It's not actually. It's translucent, but not transparent. There we go. Make sure you're covering up all the little cutouts. Grab your other little moon and the little dots around there. Pop that into place. Bam. Just like that. And there we go. Okay, so one side's done. Now we can go over to the other side, and I'm actually very kind of impressed that this is almost done. Okay, so we only have one moon on this one. That's in the center. So as we did before, just kind of work some glue around the perimeter, around the cutouts, and then maybe a little bit in the middle. That's good enough. Make sure that you are not obstructing anything and that it's nice and centered there. Let's take a look. That looks good. And then, like I said, a few little dots around the moon, or a line, or whatever works for you. And just pop that right in the center. Cover up that little moon piece. And there we go. And that just leaves two more little pieces here. And these are gonna be simple. Let's see here. And you'll notice that even the vellum is kind of cut at a certain angle to kind of work with the curve of the structure at the top. So make sure that you get one that fits accordingly. If it doesn't, it's actually probably not that big a deal, but there we go. There we go. Just give it a little squeeze here and there, and then same thing on this side, like that. Nice thin line all the way around. A few little dabs here and there on the inside. And pop that into place. Bam. Okay. Yep. All right, I'm gonna let this set a little bit so that vellum really gets a hold before we go and connect everything together. In the meantime, I'm gonna go ahead and work on the hat. Okay, so this is gonna be off to the side of the door. So I'm gonna call this section here the front. I'm gonna put a moon on the front. Okay, if you don't, it's not the end of the world, but that's how we have it designed, and I just wanna kind of make sure that I'm letting you know exactly what we did. So I'm gonna put glue on this first little tab here, find a side with the moon, and get that glued into place like so. I'm pushing on that purple tab here from the inside, and I'm pushing on the actual hat from the outside to get those two pieces to adhere nicely, nice and solid. Okay, and then we can kind of flip it back like this. I think what we're gonna need to do, since if we glue another one of these, it's not gonna be possible to lift this back, but you can see what I'm doing. I'm taking these tabs and gluing them to the inside of our hat. So what I'm gonna do is just put a nice little line of glue on each of these little tabs here. We just need them to hold. We don't need to be all crazy meticulous with it. And I'm gonna work on this tab on the opposite side. So you can see my fingers getting ready to start pushing this way. When I close this up, I'm going to push it up against the inside of that hat. Now, what are you doing, mister? Yeah, it's a little weird, but it's totally doable. There we go. Just hold it there for a moment. What's going on here? I need to put a little more glue on this. It's kind of already drying. It's crazy. It definitely is drier today. I mentioned in a previous video that I thought it was drier outside, and I've been getting a lot of static shocks today, so I know for a fact that it's drier. Okay, so I'm holding that one side, the opposite side of where we started, holding that in place for a moment to get that to grip, and then I'm gonna work my way around with the rest of the tabs here. Just pushing them up against the inside of the black part of our hat. If you have to go back and take a look at what I did for the first one, feel free to do so. But again, I'm just taking those tabs that I just put the glue on, and I'm pushing them onto the inside of the black part of the hat. And that part's done. I've got two more tabs here to go. And the last one. Perfect. Okay, so that is in place now. And again, these tabs here, we're going to use these to connect this entire thing to our structure. I'm not ready to start bending and warping this yet. I'm going to let all that set first. And again, remember, this is going to be the front here. So when we apply this band, let's put where the the cut is in the back somewhere. Okay, so let's start with the front here. Let me get my glue on the band. Make sure you get it all the way out to the bottom. And I'm just going to kind of plop it down on the surface and just push until it meets the hat. And the little edge here should match the edge of the hat as well. So just give that a little push and let that stick before you move on. I'm going to flip this open. I think at this point I can go ahead and just put glue on the remaining pieces on this side here and just wrap that around and hold it in place until it sets. There we go. That's looking sharp. I love the black, purple, orange, and yellows all together. That just, I think, is my favorite combination. The bright orange on the dark. The contrast is just, it really is illuminating. It really gets those neurons firing in my retina or in my brain. I have neurons in my retina, I think. I'm just going to pretend like I do. All right, and I'm putting a little bit of glue right towards the edge so that that doesn't come flying off. And just continue wrapping that around. And it should meet pretty much perfectly there. I ran this through a wood grain embossing folder as well, just to kind of give it a little more detail. And just give that a push. Our hat is pretty much done. Again, I'm going to let this really kind of set before I go and train the hat. Okay. All right. Looking sharp, guys. That looks great. Let's put that off to the side for now. And we can go back to this, and we're going to join these two pieces together now. And then after that, there's not much else to do. It's going to be pretty straightforward, I think. Okay, so moving right along here, we're going to connect these pieces. It's basically what we just did, except that, and actually, I got to put a little extra glue on this moon here. I didn't get enough. I'm going to fix that real quick. It's kind of coming apart. Let me fix that real quick there. You know how these three pieces were all kind of joined together, and then we just took the tabs to connect the rest of it? Well, in essence, we're going to be doing the same exact thing, except we have to join the middle piece. Okay. All right. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start at the bottom and just get some glue on this tab here. And we're going to connect it with this section here. Just want to make sure that you get that nice and aligned at the correct angle. That's going to be the most important thing in assembling this piece. There we go. And this little anchor tab is going to kind of set the tone for the rest of it. The rest of it's going to go together very easily as long as we get that piece in place. And spend a little extra time on that just so that it doesn't come undone when we start flailing this thing around and getting the next tab in place. So that is holding on nicely. So I'm going to fold these next two tabs over and just apply a little bit of glue here. And I might as well just do that one too while I have it. You can see the glue there on that tab. And then just fold that over. Whatever's the most comfortable for you. Make sure you get it nice and aligned. And then give it a squeeze. And work your way up to the next one. Nice and aligned. Give it a squeeze. Make sure that they're holding nice and firm before you move on. That one needs a little bit of a nudge. And the glue kind of gives you the opportunity to make some fine adjustments if necessary. It's tacky enough to where you can actually just kind of, if you give it a lot of force, without ripping it, of course. You can really make some fine adjustments at the expense of, not at the expense, but with the help of the tackiness of the glue. It's holding on pretty tight, but it's still loose enough to where you can just, nudge it ever so slightly without moving it way too much. So it's actually, you can kind of use its properties to your advantage. Okay, so now what I'm going to do, I've got this on my table here. You can see the next set of tabs here. I'm folding them over right now. I'll show you. They're kind of sticking up, those two right there. We're just going to apply some glue to the next two, just a tiny little bit, and then use your nozzle to kind of spread that glue around. Doesn't need to go all the way out to the edge, doesn't need to be perfect. Again, we're just kind of working on the structure, and then get it aligned and just push that in place. And whatever's comfortable for you, whatever works at this point. I'm kind of using both of my pointer fingers to kind of squish that together. And then I'm moving on to the next one. Following that nice shape there. And I knew that was going to happen. I didn't have it aligned, and I had to kind of move my finger, and it came undone. There we go. That looks good. All right, so you can see in there, I've got those three. You can see the little teeth there. There's three left. Just gonna pop my glue in there. One little drop, and just kind of work it around. And I'll do another one here. I guess I could probably work from the other side, but I want you guys to see this, and this is really the only way I can do that, so that the camera can actually show it to you. All right, so I'm going to stick my hand in there now. Got my whole hand in there, and getting it lined up, and just pushing down with my thumb, and I've got actually using my middle finger in there to push up, and then this one here, pushing this one up as well. So whatever works for you, as long as you get to the end results, that's all that really matters. Okay, so now there's just one little tooth left down there. You can see it down there at the bottom. I'll point to it. There it is, right there. And let's get our glue on that guy. And just kind of use the glue nozzle to spread it around, and then just join that right at the top. And give it a squeeze. Make sure it's nice and aligned. And that's perfect. All right. And that just leaves one more side to kind of join together. We're going to put our hat on after that, and then put our panels in. Okay. All right, so this is it. Last little section here. And I'm going to start with one tab. Again, I just want to make sure that I anchor it correctly. I don't want to try to do too much all at once, because it always ends up always bites me in the behind if I try to do that. So just get that first one lined up nicely, hold it until it's fully set, and then we've got a good starting point, and then we can move on to the next tab here, and I still don't have it lined up properly. There we go. Yep, that's about right. Good. Okay, just give that a squeeze. Make sure that's fully set. There's a little bit of resistance going on here because of the curvature, and this thing kind of wants to pull away from itself, but that glue is now holding it nicely. So what we can do is we'll take these next two tabs here. I'm just using my dowel to kind of push them down, and then I'm going to put the glue in from this side. You may not be able to see it right now, but I'll show you. You saw those two tabs that I pulled down. I'll show you the glue on there. You can see right there, these two. Okay, and then again, just work on your alignment. And down here, it's going to be pretty easy to get your finger and thumb in there, so that should be pretty simple. And the next one, just kind of pushing it up, getting it aligned and squeezing once it's in the right spot. There we go. Yeah, we're almost done. Okay, and I'll grab my dowel again, kind of bend these down. You can see what I'm doing here. There's one tab, two tabs. And let's get I'm gonna get my glue in from this side. Just a little drop, and just kind of spread it around. And get it aligned. Give it a squeeze. You got a little excess coming out of there. That's fine, just brush it off. No big deal. And the next one. There we go. And that just leaves, I think I've got 4 more there. Maybe give this one a little extra love here. There we go. Okay. So, got 1, 2, do I have 4? No, I only have 3 left. Yay. Okay, so there's 3 tabs left. Let me get my glue in here from this side. This will probably be a little easier for that one. That was a giant splotch of glue. So I'm just going to take a piece of paper and kind of pull that off, and then I'm just kind of painting the excess glue onto the other tabs. Hopefully you get the idea here. So I'd have to get like a little camera, kind of like the ones that they use for like, I think it's a colonoscopy. I need one of those colonoscopic cameras to show you what's actually going on in there. And I don't think that's really gonna, you don't really think you need that. All we're doing is the same thing we've been doing this entire time, and that's just connecting the tabs to the neighboring structure, and that's it. Okay, so there's our structure. That looks pretty darn good, if I do say so myself. And you can see how the top is kind of at an angle. What we're going to do is I'm going to close that off using this piece here. Okay, so just pick a side. I'd probably pick the side that is going to have the door on it, this side. I don't think it really matters much, but let's get some glue on. Let me zoom out now. You need to be able to see this stuff. What's happening here? All right, let's get our glue on one of the tabs here. I'm picking the side that's going to have the door. This is the side that's going to have the door. And I'm going to glue this on. Get that aligned. There we go. You can hear that wind. It's pretty wild. Okay. And then what we're going to do is just put glue on the remaining tabs here. The hat's going to be covering this up, so we don't really need to worry too much about getting the glue out to the very edge like I'm doing right now anyway, but I'm just going to do it anyway because I've gotten this far and everything's been pretty much perfect. So I'm just going to roll with it. All right, so now you can see the shape of this thing. You're probably going to have to kind of nudge this thing around to get it to take on the shape of this thing here. And that was actually not hard at all. You can stick your finger in there and nudge this or that around if you need to. And just squeeze that tab down or up against this little shape here. And again, this is all going to be covered up by the hat, so it's not a huge deal. if it's not perfect. We just kind of want this to be structural to hold this all in place. Okay, so next thing we're going to do is we're going to apply our panels. And this one's a little different compared to the pumpkin place, but ideally what we want to do is, well, I'll show you here. We're going to start, we're not going to apply glue to the whole thing. We're just going to apply glue to the top and bottom. I'm going to start at the bottom. Okay, so I'm going to apply my glue here, and the most important thing is to get that glue out to the very bottom and off to the edge a little bit, and get it nice and centered. Make sure that the cutout here lines up with the little spot there for the vellum, and that it's nice and straight. It should be nice and flush with the bottom. And then once we get that in place, we can kind of just pull it so it's nice and taut, and then we'll just glue it to the top, and that should just kind of hold it in place. I'm not overly concerned about gluing every little inch of it. I think that should hold just right. Okay, so the bottom is in place. I can kind of pop it down like this, get some glue up at the top of the panel, and just spread it nice and thin so that it sets nice and quick. Get rid of any excess glue off your fingers. And again, just kind of pull it nice and taut and keep it nice and taut while you're applying pressure here at the top to get that to hold. And you can see that it's pretty darn seamless there. And that's all we really need. We don't need to make a big globby mess of this. So as long as the top and bottom's holding, we're in good shape. Okay, and then just gonna move on to the next one. Once that's nice and in place, and let's see here. Let's make sure that we're getting the right piece here. All right, this is the moon piece here, and you can see that that's the right one because of the curve here, or the angle. Okay, so just like we did the first time, let's get our glue on the bottom here. And just spread that out to the very edge there, and maybe a little bit off to the side, and then kind of use the little cutouts for the vellum as your guide, and also make sure that it's straight, obviously, and just hold that in place. Make sure it's nice and flush with the bottom, nice and aligned, and then just give it a squeeze. Try to keep the pressure nice and even throughout there so you don't dent the paper. Okay, but that's looking pretty sharp right now. Okay, we'll let that fall and put some glue up at the top here. And just spread that right there like that. Get rid of any excess. And again, pull it nice and taut, and just adhere it right to the top there, nice and tight. And just hold that in place up at the top until it's fully set. And that looks great. So really we're just going to repeat that same process all the way around until we have all the panels in place. And then we're going to put our hat on. Well, we're going to decorate some of these little cutouts, like the windows here. They have little panels that go around them, just to kind of add those little finishing touches. And my bottom here is looking good. Thought it was kind of coming off a little bit, but it's not. All right, other side here. Let's find our other moon. Make sure that the angle is correct on the top of the panel, and that looks great. So let's get our glue onto the bottom here and up along the edge a little bit on the side, just like that. And again, kind of just holding it in place there to anchor it and making sure that I'm not obstructing any of the little vellum sections. Nice and flush at the bottom. And that is perfect. And then just give it a nice squeeze. Make sure it adheres nicely. There we go. We'll let that drop. Drop it like it's hot. And put some glue up at the top. Nice and tight, nice and taut. And bam, right up at the top there. Give it a good squeeze. And this is going very smoothly. And everything's looking really nice. So just squeeze that between your fingers, making sure that gets a good hold. As long as the top and bottom hold, the rest of it's going to stay in place. And it's pretty darn smooth too. It's not really coming up because it's really hugging the natural curve there, and you can see what it's starting to look like. It's very cool. All right, so we've got 3 more to do. If you want, you can go ahead and skip ahead. I don't care. It's up to you. Find the right piece. Make sure you're not obstructing any of the vellum portions. And get your glue on the bottom, maybe a little bit onto the sides at the bottom. And just spread that nice and thin. Okay. And holding it up at the top here. And bringing that down, making sure that all of the little cutouts are properly aligned. Nice and flush with the bottom. Give it a good squeeze. This also thickens this up and makes it a little more rigid too, which is nice. There we go. Beautiful. Okay, give that a few extra seconds. Make sure it's nice and tight. Let that drop. And get some glue up at the top. And just spread that nice and thin. Kind of get a lot of that area there. There we go. And again, nice and taut. And bam, right up at the top there. There we go. Okay, a couple more to go, and we're almost on the home stretch here. Looking good. All right, let's grab our little moon piece here and get my glue on the bottom, just as we've done with every single other piece here. Spread that glue right out to the very edge, maybe a little bit on the side there. That looks good. And just kind of hold it up at the top while you bring it down to the bottom. Make sure it's nice and flush with the bottom. And give it a squeeze. There we go. Perfect. Okay, let that drop. Glue right there, spread it out nice and thin. I'm kind of in a very zen mode right now, so I'm not really chatting too much, but that's okay. I kind of am almost mesmerized by the progress we've made, and I'm kind of excited to see what this is going to pan out to look like when it's all said and done. All right, so just kind of squeezing the top there, making sure that has a nice hold, and you can see how nice and flush that is. You don't have any little bits peeking up or pulling away, which is perfect, exactly what we were hoping for. Which leaves us with our last one here. And just get that spread out nicely. Okay, I'm gonna grab it from up here, kind of line it up, and snag it down. There we go. Make sure it's nice and aligned with the bottom, nice and flush, and give it a squeeze. And we are almost on the home stretch here, guys, gals, and guys. Okay, and finally, let that last piece drop. And let's get our glue right there. And just spread it thin. There we go. And last one is going in, nice and taut. Make sure it's nice and aligned, and there we go. That's perfect. All right. Kudos to the Dreaming Tree team for an amazing job. Ron with the designs, and the engineering on this is perfect. I mean, as far as paper goes, I don't think you could really get any more precise. So it's been a joy working with these pieces. Okay, so hopefully that is pretty much set. All right, let's put our little decorative pieces on here. We've got 2 small moons and 1 large moon. The 2 small moons are going to go over the little cutouts of the moons here. They're like little borders for our windows. So we're just going to go very easy on the glue on this. We don't want it spilling out, especially because we've got a dark paper that this is going on. And if you get any glue that spills out, it may dry with that glossy sheen and it may not look great. I mean, if it happens, it's not the end of the world, but get that glued in place. Do your best to get that nice and aligned. Just run your finger around the perimeter, let that set. Let's go over to the other moon. Same thing. There we go. Just a light dusting, if you can do that, of glue on that. You don't need a whole ton. And using my table to kind of just leave the main structure on for stability as I apply this. That looks good. Okay, and then we've got a giant moon on the back here. So let's get that glued down. Okay, take your time. Get it nice and lined up there. And just press that. Oops. Oh boy. Take your time, he says. Do your best, he says. There we go. Okay. All right, so that is looking sharp. Now, we've got on the front of our house, we've got this little piece here that's going to get glued on like so. All right, so let's get our glue on the back of this little bat. And just kind of cover this up like so. And I probably have way too much on some of these spots, so I'm just going to dab this a little bit to flatten it out. It kind of makes it more tacky too, so it will set a lot faster. Okay, and just match up the little cutouts for the windows, obviously. Use that as kind of your visual for placement, and then just push down all around to get that in place. There we go. Which leaves our door. Let's get our door in place. And it's pretty obvious where the door goes, just like that. So I'm going to get my glue on the door. This was embossed with a wood grain as well. And because of the embossing, it kind of creates little divots on the back where even if you get some glue in there, it's not going to do much good because it's almost like, well, it's lowered. So make sure you get a good, make sure you cover this thing with glue nicely so that it sticks. Okay, and just match it up with the existing little cutouts there and just apply it nicely. Give it a little push. Make sure it's nice and flush with the bottom as well. There we go. Beautiful. Just like that. And then we've got a little door frame to put around that to really polish this thing off. So that is nice. Here's our little door frame. Let's get some glue on this guy here. Make sure you get that glue out to the very bottom of this little door frame here so that the little strip doesn't come pulling apart. And it's a pretty delicate piece, so I am just going to kind of dab that so I don't get any glue shooting out, especially again because we've got dark paper here. And just get that centered over the door. Do your best to get that nice and centered, like so. There we go. And I got a little bit of glue that kind of splashed out, but it's okay. It's still gonna look awesome. There we go. Okay. All right, so there it is. And let's get our hat in place. Again, the little point with the little round part here. And actually, you know what we should do? Let's go ahead and train this now. Now is a good time to do that. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to pull up this side to make that kind of bend up, like so. I'm going to bend this up a little bit too. I'm going to bend this up a little bit too, using a 3/8 inch dowel. Okay, I'm going to pull this up a little bit here, like so. And then these two little sections here, I'm going to pull them down like that. Okay, so we've got, I think that's pretty good. Okay, so now one other thing too, again, we want these two little points off to the left and the moon that is next to those matched up with the front of the house. So I almost did this out of order, but you're gonna let's put glue on this first tab here on the side that matches up with the moon. Okay, that has these two little points here off to the left. And we're gonna pop this in, and you're gonna stick your hand in and take that tab and glue it to the underside of the orange little lip that we had up there. Look how cool, that looks really cool actually, geez. Actually, this might be my favorite piece, I don't know. But I'm just squeezing that tab underneath. I'll show you here in a second. I'll show you the underneath version of it. Not version, but viewpoint. I think that's holding pretty well. So I can flip this over, and let me grab my dowel here. Okay, you can kind of make it out here. There it is, right there. That was the tab that I just put glue on, and I just pushed it up against the inside of this. Okay, so you're gonna push all the rest of the tabs along the inside of that flat part there to get that to hold. So now, what we have to do is we have to open this up again. And actually, that's not really gonna be possible. So anyway, you can see the tabs here. There's a few tabs left here. Let me pull them down so you can see them better. And what we need to do is we need to get glue on the rest of these tabs here and stick this whole, we're gonna have to stick this whole thing in now and glue those tabs to the underside of the orange piece there. So you can see the glue on each of those tabs. We're gonna pop that inside, and we're gonna grab those tabs and pull them underneath and glue them to the underside of the orange section. I hope that makes sense, because I can't really show you that. But that is working nicely, actually, and it's staying put very well. Yep, I'll show you the inside here in a second. Okay, I'm just going around. You can go clockwise or counterclockwise, whatever you want to do, and just get those tabs in place. All right, so I'm going to flip this around now. And actually, I've got one more here that I didn't do. Let me just get that in place before I show you this. There we go. Okay, so those tabs that were hanging off of the hat are now glued to the underside of the yellow top, that six-sided top that we put on top of the this main structure after we were done. So hopefully that makes sense. I think it does. But there she is, and I think she's beautiful. So she's gonna go on her, wow, look at that. That is really cool. And to finish it off, we're gonna take these leaves here and we're gonna train them a little bit, kind of give them a little bit of a curve, like so. Just at the tips, I think is fine. And we're gonna glue those to the underside, right below the hat. I think this is my favorite piece. I think it most certainly is. Okay, now you'll notice that on these leaves here, there's little marks on the tab. One has a mark of a 1, and this one has a mark of a 2, like a Roman numeral 2. The 2 is gonna go on this side. Okay, so what we wanna do is just put a little bit of glue on this tab. Don't need a lot, just go very easy. You don't wanna overdo it because it's gonna take forever to stick, and just glue it to the left of the center where the door is. Okay, so just pop that right up there and just hold it in place for just a moment, let it set. There we go. Okay, so we got a cute little leaf coming out from under there, and then last one here, that's gonna go to the right of the door. This one has a Roman numeral 1 on it. Okay, and that's gonna go right in there, right up to the, just kind of butt it up against the very top if you can. Let me get that right in there. There we go. And that's it. Just hold that in place for just a moment. Let it fully set. This piece is kind of magical, actually. I really love it. I love how it turned out, and the colors are just amazing. And there we go. Okay, let's put her on our base. And voila, there is our Spook Shack. I definitely think it's my favorite piece. So sadly, the last one for 2018, but definitely, I think, me personally, I saved the best for last. Great bundle, had a lot of fun putting it together. I hope you did too. If you enjoyed hanging out with me and crafting, please take a moment and visit our YouTube page and hit that subscribe button. It lets me know that you're enjoying what we do and you're having a great time with me. So please do that. And if you do make this or any of the items from our new bundle, please visit our official group on Facebook by doing a search for Dreaming Tree Group on Facebook and join myself and 7,500 other dreamers who inspire us daily. So thanks again for joining me, and I look forward to crafting with you again.
Stay on top of all things Dreaming Tree and engage with us today. Get the latest news and enter in our giveaways on Facebook. Get inspired by following us on Pinterest. Be the first to see our new product launches on Instagram. Do you prefer Twitter? Yep, we're there too. Watch our beautiful product trailers and assembly tutorials on YouTube. For more information, visit www.3dsvg.com. Live, craft, love, and dream.